On February 12, 2016, the Department of Justice prepares to step up war on domestic terrorists. Are the people who stand up and fight for their rights considered to be terrorists, especially those that are doing so peacefully? Our government continuously assassinates anybody who stands up peacefully. These people who stand up are not terrorists, but patriots fighting for their rights. The rights that our forefathers fought for. The rights that were laid out for us 240 years ago in the ideas of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We do not believe in the death of America, but in the rebirth of America, and to cleanse the destruction that our government has done to our nation over the past years. This is not a nation run by its government, but by its people. It is said in the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to give you a link of this in the description, so please read this. I sit here asking you to rethink what our government has done. Do they follow the Constitution? Do they follow the Declaration of Independence? Do they follow the people of this great nation? Do we deserve the same title as the people who want to destroy us? Or do we educate each other about oppression and tyranny? God bless.
Got a basics. I mean, I got another thing I got to do at. I got a live stream I got to do tonight at 6:30. So
Gotcha.
I got time to gear up for that.
We're live now on the air.
Right.
I want to just make sure. Can anyone out there hear us? I want to make sure. Put something in the comments. Let me know that we're good to go. My prompt says say something. Say something. All right. Yeah, we're going live right now. All right, guys. Can you see us out there? We're live now on the air. All right. I'm going to make sure I turn that off. Okay. All right, guys. We are live on the air. We got Gavin Syme here. I'm Tommy with Off Grid Nation. And we got Gavin Syme. Now, you guys probably, if you didn't know a Gavin beforehand, last Thursday we had him scheduled to come on and speak with us, and technical difficulties prohibited us from having that conversation. But as life happened, he was called in on the Maru Refuge with the 4 remaining out there in Oregon. And he was instrumental in helping diffuse that situation, along with a few other people in the Almighty, I think. Gavin, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good to be here, Tommy.
Can you hear me, Gavin?
Yeah, I can hear you. Am I here?
I can't hear you.
Now? Well, that figures. Hang on.
No. Hold on a second. I can't hear you there. I got to just turn you down on the other. Hold on a second. All right. All right. Can you hear me now, Gavin?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Excellent. Okay, I just had to turn you down because I'm watching live stream on another window, and I have your comments up in another window. So, okay.
Hey,
well, welcome to the show, Gavin. I appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate it.
All right. So, last Thursday, and by the way, I'm gonna say thank you on behalf of myself and everyone else that was watching, because that was, I mean, my heart was jumping out of my chest. You want to take us back to that and tell us kind of what was going through your mind when you got called in on that?
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of dropped in our lap, and I think God put it where it needed to be personally. But I think really, what actually happened is right around the time that we were trying to get the call going with you, the phone started ringing, and so that actually we decided to call it a day on that at a timely time. And Nathan and I were both here in the studio, and we both took that call, which was an urgent call from David Fry saying, "Hey, we're surrounded. These guys are coming to kill us." And they had, I think it was 4 to 6 of these military vehicles there, and things were pretty tense at that moment. And so we were kind of taken by surprise. I mean, I hadn't heard from David since the previous week, and as far as I knew, they were just still down there. And so I had nothing in place. It wasn't like there was anything planned. There was no groups involved. There was no, plan for if this happened. And so we're just sitting here in the studio and we're listening to him, and I put him on speakerphone and immediately just started recording here on the computer, thinking, okay, well, if something goes down, at least there's a record of it. And then Nathan and I kind of looked at each other and said, well, should we live stream this? And so really what it came down to is I just went to the YouTube channel and we just turned the phone on, turned the webcam on to get the, set a microphone next to that phone. And the next 4 hours and, the 4 hours the next day kind of made history, I guess. But really it was just, I think it was just due diligence of if someone's in peril, especially if the government's attacking them, the reasonable thing to do, the only right thing to do is to put that out publicly so that people can say, hey, here's what's going on.
I mean, you know what? It's no question in my mind that having that out there, and you said this many times, you expose them to the light,
right,
it could very well have saved their lives having that out there.
Yeah, I think that, who knows what would have happened, but it's very clear that the FBI was not there for negotiation. They never were. The FBI was never negotiating right up to the end, really. The FBI was pushed back by the incredibly loud outcry of thousands of people who were watching them live. The FBI never de-escalated. They had to back off because there was so much ire and public pressure on them. And then that next morning, they didn't even negotiate. In the end, it was the Patriots talking to David Fry. It was his friends talking to him. It was Ammon Bundy talking to him. But if you go back to Wednesday night, the FBI was not only not there to negotiate, they were surrounding, intimidating, they were goading these people. They were actually trying to start a fight. And so you really have to start thinking, okay, these guys are trying to get somebody to lose it and start shooting so they can start a war, so they can declare martial law. I mean, they're really trying to instigate something.
That came through loud and clear to me, and probably the rest of the world too. And I know there was a bunch of people on the live stream. I can't even begin to understand some of the comments that I see out there. But I also saw America Standing Up in the comments, and I know that broadcast reached over 60,000 people just on your channel, but I saw so many people echoing that broadcast. I saw the mainstream media pick it up. So I know it went out to hundreds of thousands of people, and eventually probably millions of people when people went back and listened to it the following day.
Right.
So if people didn't hear Gavin Syme before that night, chances are you heard of him since then. And Gavin, he ran for Congress. Am I right in saying that? What year did you run for Congress?
That was 2014. So
Okay.
about 2 years ago now, I was running for Congress. Yeah.
2014, Gavin does a lot of work in the liberty movement. I've seen him go out there and dress down police officers and educate them on what the laws really are and how they're not following them, especially when it comes to unmarked vehicles. So you've been around this for a while. Kind of give us an idea, give the people listening, why do you do this, Gavin? What are you out there trying to prove? Who are you trying to reach? What's the message?
You know, really the message at this point is love your neighbor. The message is our government is completely out of control. They're totally lawless. They're totally rampant. And it's really like saying, well, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to oppose the schoolyard bully, except for the schoolyard bully is our entire government right down to the county level. It's our entire system of so-called justice in this nation. It's the federal government, it's our state governments, it's our county governments, it's our farce of due process in our courts. And the principal man has to stand up to that in whatever way that they're able. I mean, we're looking more honestly, and I'm not kidding about this. You know, in the past we said, oh, you know, this is Nazi Germany stuff. We're starting to look more and more like 1934 Nazi Germany. I mean, the dissidents as we speak are being rounded up. Quite honestly, I mean, Nathan, myself, anytime we expect the feds to come busting through the door, it's simply because we're speaking out and we're vocal in this stuff. And so I don't know what it's going to take, guys. I mean, now it's our own getting arrested, getting thrown into prison. And let me be quite candid. You know, people say, well, you know, I support police and I stand with the blue line. And the reason those people are getting arrested is because they're black and they're out of control. And obviously, I mean, I don't care about race. I don't care about faction. I care about liberty. But the patriot groups are divided against the liberals and the blacks are divided against the conservatives and the Republicans against the Democrats. And so really what it is these corrupt politicians on both sides of the aisle are pulling the strings. They got people more worried about Muslims and the border than they do about the greatest terrorist organization in the world, which is our own government. And they're terrorizing us right now, spilling American blood on American soil. So don't look me in the eye, America, and tell me that, well, we have to worry about everybody else. We need to fix us. I mean, from the slaughter of our own unborn to the allowing of police to execute people on the side of the road. And so they'll say, well, Gavin, you hate cops, you hate government. No, I hate injustice. And who really hates government is our government. Who really hates law is our government. And so if we have a police officer that's defending that, if he starts arresting his own, you show me a police officer that's arresting these judges in these courts, and I will be right in there supporting him. But it's not about government. It's not about whether you wear a uniform. It's about your actions. End of story. Do you uphold your oath? Do you defend the law or not? We have to unite and set aside all these factions and all this foolishness. There's lots of people I disagree with, but that doesn't mean I sit idle and let them be abused because I love my neighbor. All of them, even the ones that I don't really like, I still care for their well-being because liberty, that's what it's about.
Well, I was going to wait to get to this, but you kind of brought it up, and I was going to ask you about a video that you put up just a couple of days ago, and I believe the gentleman's name is Jeff Winehouse.
Right.
Okay, so you mentioned police executing citizens on the side of the road, and if you guys out there haven't seen this video, please go over to Gavin's channel. Gavin, you want to mention the name of the video if you recall it?
Yeah, if you just search for FBI and state police attempt to assassinate Jeff Winehouse, or probably if you just search for Jeff Winehouse, or if you go to my Facebook page, Gavin Sign for Liberty, the video's on there.
I saw this video and literally my blood started to boil, because here's a situation where you had a YouTube reporter, from what I can tell. This guy was working out of his garage and he was talking about politics and he was calling people out, and he was targeted by the state police and the FBI is where it ended up. And They arrested him because they said they smelled marijuana in his house, and they took his computers and his cameras. And then after him saying, "Hey guys, I want this back, they set up a meeting. This guy had a camera on his wristwatch, a wristwatch camera, and he videotaped his attempted execution. And as I saw this, my blood boiled, because not only did this guy live, he got shot twice in the chest, I think, and once in the head. He lived, but they arrested him, charged him, convicted him, and he's currently serving 25 years in prison, while the two people that shot him are never been charged. And they've probably been promoted for all I know.
Yeah, and we're seeing this all the time, and people have no concept. It's not patriotism to say I support government. And we have this idea. I see a lot of these patriot groups, and they love to say, well, I support the Constitution and I stand with police and government and firefighters. And I'm like, I don't stand with any faction. I stand with liberty. And so I don't care if you're a police officer or a firefighter. I don't hate a faction because of who they are, and I don't love a faction because of who they are. That's not liberty. And I would go back to really, biblical principles. God's not a respecter of persons, and I'm not going to be either. So I don't care what your color is, what your faction is. I care about your actions. And when you look at something like Jeff Winehouse, we just saw this with Lavoy Finicum, and they assassinated Lavoy successfully. And you see videos, and then you see with like Jeff Winehouse, which this was in 2012, on 9/11/2012, he should have died, but it wasn't his time. And they didn't succeed at that. And there was people watching from across the street. I don't think they knew he had a camera at the time. I actually talked to Jeff just recently, and he said it was a miracle that footage even existed, because, it was one of those watch cameras that kind of works half the time and half the time it doesn't. And so to have footage like that is absolutely unprecedented. You would think that it was something out of a movie, because you're actually seeing the shells flying out of the chamber as they're trying to murder him, and he falls to the ground. And, I'm sick of this attitude of we oppose tyranny, but we support certain factions. We oppose tyranny, but veterans can do no wrong. We oppose tyranny, but police can do no wrong. There's liberty and there's not liberty, America. And the fact is, the American police are not supporting liberty. Now, that doesn't mean there's not exceptions. And people say, well, there's good cops. And I'm like, please show them to me. I want to know them, But the reality is there's less and less, quote, good cops, because, and I know cops. The cops that stand up are either killed, charged themselves, or fired. End of story. That's how it works in America right now. And the only reprieve to that I see at this point is if you had a town or a sheriff that really stood up. Think about how it would turn this country upside down if one sheriff really stood up. Now, I know we have some sheriffs and we say, well, they're constitutional sheriffs and they're saying some good things. But if one sheriff really stood up and said, we're done. The federal government is criminal. They're out of this county, period. We're no longer allowing the law to be violated. We're no longer extorting our citizens. We're no longer tolerating judges who violate due process, who violate the Sixth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. We're no longer arresting people for gun crimes or gun possession crimes because there's no such thing. Imagine if a sheriff actually stepped up and held the Constitution. It would be complete uproar across the nation.
Well, I think Sheriff Clark is probably the guy that's come closest, or one of the guys that's come the closest. But I think you bring up a good point. He's saying good things, but has he done anything in his county? And I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you do.
Right. Well, and I've heard good things about him. You have Sheriff Palmer in Oregon, and people are encouraged about him. And And you have who? Yeah, Finch in Florida. So there's guys out there, but this is what I ask people. They say, well, our sheriff's really good. I can't tell you how many counties people have said, well, our sheriff's really good. He's constitutional. And then I see them railroading somebody. I see them allowing a prosecutor to trump up charges. I see them. It's like, here's the thing. Your sheriff's good. Have they arrested anybody this year for possession of a weapon? Because if they have, they're not a constitutional sheriff.
Right,
There is no such thing as an illegal weapon, period. It's called the Second Amendment. And so everybody has these deluded ideas because we're so broken. We're so broken that the country looks at Trump and says, wow, he looks pretty good. He doesn't look good to me at all. This isn't a man supporting liberty. Think about this. Did you ever think we would fall to this, Tommy? America has fallen to the point where they look at Russia's president and say, wow, what a man.
No, seriously,
this is ridiculous.
I can't believe myself that I more closely align myself with the president of Russia than I do the president of my country.
And he's corrupt too, of course. But the point is, we're so far from law that people actually tolerate no law. I mean, don't even get me started on the "don't mess with Texas" folks. And they're celebrating because, like, well, yeah, we can finally open carry now as long as we follow the rules. And I'm like, and these guys will go rabid on me in no time because I'm like, wait a minute. You guys are saying you're always talking about how tough you are, and you're just now getting open carried, and you can only do it within all these certain parameters. You guys don't have any liberty. You're slaves to your government. And they're like, oh, you're just a Muslim idiot. Get out of here. You don't belong in Texas. I mean, it's sad, really, because we're deluded with self-praise and saying, rah, rah, America, rah, rah, patriots. But it's not patriotism. It's not liberty. It's not loving our neighbor unless we're defending the rule of law. And the rule of law is simple. The rule of law on the ultra foundational sense goes back to Jesus. Hey, love God. Okay, there's your moral law. And civil law, love your neighbor as yourself. So that's really the foundation of law. But let's fast forward a little bit. Let's go into the foundations before the Constitution: life, liberty, and property. Life, liberty, and property. Life, liberty, and property. If it does not protect life, liberty, and property equally, individually, and for all, it is not law, which means a law that says, everybody has to mow their grass once a month or they go to jail is not law. It's impossible for that to be law. It's always tyranny. And people say, well, we have to do something about these people that never mow their lawn. Everybody's always got an excuse. As long as the tyranny doesn't affect them, they still consider themselves a patriot. If you support tyranny, you're not defending liberty.
Well, yet these people, and let's face it, I've been indoctrinated my whole life. You have, everybody has. So it's going to take a while to get the country out of this. And in my opinion, we're going to do it with education, not with a gun. We're going to do it with our voices, not with a 30-round clip. Of course, I believe the Second Amendment is there, so every other amendment has teeth. I mean, the Second Amendment gives we the people teeth. But I'm hearing a lot of patriots, and I'm using quotation marks, that are real quick to want to pick up a weapon. And I don't know that that's the answer. What is your stance on that? Because I know you're a Second Amendment guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've led some, big Second Amendment defiance rallies and stuff here in Washington. But the reality is, and I said this, I think I even said this on the live stream the other night, our guns are not going to save us. Our guns didn't save us in the American Revolution. Now, qualify that. We must have the guns. We must preserve that right. But there's a reason the First Amendment is first. The power of our faith and the power of our voice, the power of swaying hearts and minds is first. And let's be very clear, they're going after that right now. I mean, you look at guys like Pete Santilli arrested down in Oregon for reporting. You look at people, and I just got a call from Burns, from a report from Oregon. The FBI is going around to people's doors and they're harassing them. They're asking them questions. Oh, do you have any neighbors? They're trying to get them to rat out on each other. They're saying, do you have any friends that went out there that took them food or anything like that? I mean, this is Gestapo stuff, guys. This is not America. We do not have a United States of America anymore. And we still have a Constitution in form and in principle, but really the Constitution is gone in the courts too. And people, I'm really concerned because a lot of people are still resting on this idea of, well, now that they're in the courts, the Oregon Patriots are going to get due process. And Ammon Bundy knows better than that. There's no due process in the courts. What happens in the courts has nothing to do with the Constitution. They platitude it a little bit now and then. They give it a little nod now and then to try and convince people. And so basically, I mean, you go into a courtroom as a juror and they're going to say, well, the victim, the criminal is innocent until proven guilty. And so when you look at this criminal, you need to know that they're innocent unless they're proven guilty. That's
Yep.
how we treat criminals. And so they say criminal 3 times and they say innocent a few times. They control every sense of the message in that courtroom, and they control your evidence. They control your lawyer. They control how it's presented. They control what you can say. It's not an accident. You want to know the state of the courts, what's going on in Oregon? Whenever you have a court, and here's what they're doing down there. They're intentionally putting them in the teeny tiny rooms so hardly anybody can fit. I mean, the hearing for the Final Four end of last week, Michelle Fior got in there and she said there was probably 100 people waiting in the hall and 100 more outside because they intentionally put it in a courtroom that held like 30 people, including all the family members and everybody like that. And to top it off, no cameras allowed. Okay, so these are not courts, constitutional courts. These are secret courts. That's what these are. These are secret courts where they can do whatever they want and manipulate, because when you see it in writing on a court transcript, it's not going to have the same effect on people, and they know that. So they say, oh, it's public. You can request a transcript. There's nothing public about what they're doing in our federal courts.
Yeah, well, and I'll go back to this Jeff Winehouse story. If you think that there's justice in the court system, I'll ask you how a guy could videotape his own attempted murder and still end up behind bars, even though he did nothing wrong.
It's absurd.
You realize there is no justice in the courts. So, Gavin, I have some questions because honestly, it's been about a week. Well, I mean, here we are Tuesday. So five days ago is when this the remaining 4 from Oregon came to a close, or 4 days ago. But I wanted to go back to that and just I've heard so many people label the people that went out to the refuge, the patriots that went out to the refuge, terrorists, and they call them horrible names and put horrible comments. Y'all Qaeda, they're just redneck white terrorists, and they people interject race to try to stir the pot and further divide us. But I want to know this: were there any laws? Did they break any laws at all going out there to begin with?
Not as far as I know. Nothing that I can tell. And that's the thing. People say, well, and this goes back to what law is. They're like, well, of course they broke laws. They weren't allowed to do this and they weren't allowed to do that. And there was this statute. The statutes don't matter. The law does. The government and the courts, they don't make law. They legislate within law. And so we call them lawmakers, but their law, and that's true in a sense, but their law is only law if it complies with the law. End of story. And so the Constitution, which is self-proclaimed the supreme law, says the government shall not own this property. And then they say, well, we own this property, and this is the law if you do this on this property. Well, wait a minute. Everything past we own this property is, by legal definition, not law because it violates the superior law. And that's how law works.
Right. So, okay. So as far as we can tell, these people, because it was men and women, patriots from all over the country, showed up there and occupied the refuge center there, out in the middle of nowhere. As far as we can tell, they didn't violate any law yet. They were educating people and they were getting the message out, and you could sense kind of a tide was turning, not just in Burns, but in the neighboring counties. So on the night that Lavoy Finicum was murdered, they were driving to neighboring, I think it was Grant County, to meet with Sheriff Palmer and about 400 residents out there.
Right.
And they set up an ambush. So they of course came out with this footage, the aerial footage, and it was as grainy as you can get. Now, we all know they have satellites that they can literally read your driver's license from space, but for some reason they can't give you a clear picture of what was going on a few hundred feet or 1,000 feet in the air. But what can we do, if anything, we the people, to try to hold these people accountable, whether they did something good or bad? We want to hold them accountable. Is there anything we can do?
Well, as a believer, I'm going to say the first thing we can do is pray and repent. I mean, I think that's huge in our nation. But let's talk on a practical sense too, because there's probably the people that want to hear from that perspective. The first thing you can do is you can spread the message. I mean, look, it's not an accident people are being arrested for speaking. Okay, that's why Santilli's in jail. That's why I'm being watched. And so speaking is the most dangerous thing to them. The government knows that our voice is more dangerous than our weapons. Look at all the patriot groups that said, we're going to be there. We're not going to let this happen. None of them did. So all these patriot groups, all these groups, and I don't even like to point the finger at somebody, but the reality is they weren't ready. They weren't there. They didn't do what they said they would do. They said, when the day comes, we're not going to let the law be trampled anymore. We're going to step up. They didn't do it. And so then you have to ask yourself the question, well, rather than point fingers, let's learn from our experiences. But the goal is not to say, well, how soon can we get to a point where we will have armed conflict. We don't want armed conflict because historically that fails too. If you don't have a revolution of hearts, a revolution of blood is just more chaos, more suffering. And so people watch movies and they play video games and they're like, yeah, revolution. Those kind of TV shows are really popular right now because everybody feels the tyranny, right? And so they watch revolution-styled TV shows so they can live vicariously through those without having to sacrifice anything. But the reality is, bloody revolution is not glorious. It's horrible. And just, watching your friends go to jail, watching your friends die, and we're already starting to see that now. People need to understand we are living under a regime of tyranny. America is essentially it's really a dictatorship at this point. And the rule of law is gone in the courts. And so, you play it safe and you hope you don't get arrested. And if you do, you're guilty, except for in rare exceptions where it's almost like in the courts, justice is kind of a wisp of smoke that's left floating through the courtroom. And occasionally you can get a snag of it, but for the most part, it's really not there anymore. So if you want to do something, the first thing you got us doing is start speaking out. But you know what? You also got to take some action. Sharing stuff on Facebook, getting videos like this one out. Those are important things, but you got to do more than voice. And so, last week, for example, we had this huge call flood saying, get them out of solitary confinement. Well, 24 hours later, and thousands of calls, we were overwhelming phone lines in Oregon of these public numbers. And 24 hours later, they were out of solitary confinement. Now, I think some of the new guys that have been arrested are back in solitary confinement again. And so they always are our outcry doesn't make them more lawful. The pressure just sometimes makes them back off. So we can do public outcry and public pressure, just like we saw with the call in Oregon. And the principle here is that if we take action, there can be response. But then you have to ask, okay, how do we go beyond that? And at some point, you've got to show up. You've got to be willing to get arrested. At some point, you've got to, give your money. And this is the reality. I mean, all these patriots are like, yeah, rah, patriots, we're there behind you. Until the guys put out their fundraiser page, everybody's like, oh, I'm sorry. Everybody's got an excuse when it comes to putting it on the line, even if it's $20. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of watching, myself, my family, and others put their necks on the line for liberty. And then when the day comes, it's like nobody will show up in court. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to work. We got this guy up in Okanagan County, James Fair, and who's a patriot, and they got a bogus murder charge they're trying to pin him on because he got attacked by some people that didn't like him, and the government doesn't like him up there, and it simply didn't happen. I mean, there's witnesses, but they're prosecuting because they can. And everybody, whenever the court dates come up, it's like, yeah, I really support you, man, but I can't be there today. I got a meeting, I can't do that. Yeah. And so, well, I got to play flag football today. There's always an excuse. I mean, the people, as high profile as Ammon Bundy is, and he's raised the most money for legal fees, of course, of all of them. But, you got concerts that will sell out in 30 seconds. Yeah. And you've got a guy like Ammon Bundy who just showed America what it was like to be a founding father, along with the other patriots down there. What? Yeah, and there's a lot of these patriots that have fundraisers, but they've collectively, I don't know, maybe collected $100,000. It's not even a scratch in the surface. America, you're not stepping up. You're not doing, all you're doing is talking on Facebook. You're not actually doing anything because at the end of the day, you want somebody else to do it for you. You're not taking a stand for liberty. You're not defending your neighbor. You're not showing up in your courtrooms and seeing the horror and the corruption happening there and going out and exposing that darkness to the world and telling your friends and neighbors and putting it out there on Facebook. So don't get me wrong. The social media is valuable and important and sharing stuff is too. But you have to be willing to actually sacrifice something. The people that founded this country, they put it all on the line. The people in America now, they won't even put a cup of coffee's worth of money on the line because, things are pretty tight and they have to get that new video game and that new big screen TV. I mean, there's no sacrifice from most of America that claims to be patriots.
Let me say this. I think you're absolutely right for the majority of America. I've seen that myself, but I've been guilty of it myself too, Gavin.
Sure.
Now, I've for too long have sat back and watched guys like you and admired guys like you, because there's a lot of guys out there that are doing similar things. You happen to be one of the more vocal and one of the more visible. But I watched you guys, I admired you guys, but I haven't done a whole lot. And I've kind of gotten to the point here, and I think you and others like you have given me the what's the word I'm looking for? You got me over my fears. You've given me some type of
Right.
I'm sorry?
I'm just agreeing.
Oh, okay. So you've got me to a point to where I'm ready to say, you know what, forget it. I'm gonna stand up, even though I'm scared, because you know what, they are watching us. And I've had this conversation with my family, and it was a weird conversation to have. Like, hey, somebody might show up here to talk to us, and they're trained to escalate things to get to a more feverish pitch. And I'm having this conversation, and you can see the look of fear in their eyes. And I'm like, geez, you know. But it's sad that we have to have that in our country. But if more of us stood up, if more of us made phone calls and emails and showed up in court, and again, I've been guilty of this, but I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, and I'm asking you guys that are out there watching this to do that. Take some steps. Don't just share a comment on Facebook or a comment on YouTube. You got to take extra steps. And I've made videos that have made it, I think, easy to do some of those things. And I'm not alone. So we're asking you this. We all need to step up as a nation. If we want to make a change, we have to make a change. It's not going to come from the top down. We're not going to vote it in for president. I don't care if it's Trump or if it's Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. They're all the same. The change is going to come from the bottom up. And we're the bottom up people. So we have to make the change. So
yeah, and that's, you know, you're absolutely right. And the goal is not to point fingers at you or him or him. The goal is to say we have to point the finger at all of us. We're here because we let this happen. America is a government by the consent of the governed. And America consented to tyranny for decade after decade after decade. We are here because we allowed this to happen. And people don't even understand that even if somebody committed a real crime, there is no due process in our courts. Nobody's getting due process. They also don't understand how much it matters, how much of a difference it makes if you just show up. I mean, this is huge for people. When you get arrested, they isolate you. Every single jail in this country is mental abuse. You know, people. So the conservative patriots are like, yeah, well, you know, I mean, people shouldn't be comfortable if they're in jail. The people saying that haven't been in jail, because the moment you're in jail, when you go to jail, you haven't had a trial, you haven't been convicted, you're so-called innocent until proven guilty, as they lock you in solitary confinement. They intentionally isolate you, make you afraid, make it so you can't sleep well. It's a torturous environment. Even if it's not physically abusive, it's mentally abusive. And so these people, they walk out of the jail into the courtroom in a daze, and they're just totally disconnected from the world. Just seeing their friends in the courtroom can make all the difference to them. Yeah. They need more than that, of course, but it's something. You can do something. If you're not doing something, you're not defending liberty.
Agreed. All right. So guys, I am looking at your comments in the live chat here, and I'm going to try to ask as many as I can. We're in a little bit of a time crunch, so I won't be able to get to all of them, but I think it was Rich had a comment here. He asked, Gavin, how did you know the FBI? How did he know the FBI cell phone number David Fry had? I think David called you, right? Did you know his number?
Right. No, David had called me, and I think the phone he was calling me on was not the FBI phone. I think he got a hold of another phone somewhere, and David reached out to me. And so really what my role was just to rebroadcast.
Okay. And Monica Jean, thank you. I'm not gonna go any further than that. But what is your take? And I'd like to get back to Lavoie's murder and that sort of thing. But some other questions that I had sent to me via email was, what's your opinion on the so-called constitutional judges that we've heard about recently, Darby, Anna Van Reitz? Any thoughts on them?
I think the problem we face is, you know, people love to say, well, these guys aren't judges. And I'm like, well, the guys sitting in the courtroom aren't judges. So how do you define a judge? And so we have this issue. The statements they're making are usually really good. The problem is the court system is not going to step out of the way, guys. These judges aren't going to say, oh, well, you guys are right, we're going to go along with you. There's an idea among people that if you go before a judge and if you present the right verbiage or the right language, or you don't cross the bar, or you don't acknowledge that you're a citizen, or all these things, that that's going to somehow scare them and it'll stop them from abusing you. And then they'll say, well, I'm just going to opt out of the courts and I'm going to go with the common law courts. Look, our courts should all be common law courts. And so these guys are right. And these judges, hopefully what they're putting out there eventually can become real courts in time as things kind of collapse and we try to rebuild. But there's no magic word. This idea that you can walk into a courtroom and say, well, I did this, or I declare that the Bar Association is illegal because it's under the British Crown. There's all these conspiracies, and they're all for the most part pointless. Even if there's ones that are true, they're really pointless. Because here's the reality: when I get arrested, I go into a courtroom at the point of a gun. Right. And every time, so people say, well, I've driven without a driver's license for years. Okay, great. You should have that right. You do have that right. You have the right to travel. But guess what? If they want you, they'll take you. The reason you're getting away with it is because they haven't decided that they care that much. They got bigger fish to fry. And so the reason you're getting away with that is because you're not actually that big of a thorn in their side. Our courts, when they want you, they take you. It doesn't matter. I mean, look no further than Lavoie. Look no further than Jeff Winehouse, Schaefer Cox, the Patriots in Oregon, Pete Santilli. How many names do you have to put out there? And then people say, well, I don't opt into this. Guess what? Try opting out of a traffic ticket. Try opting out of a speeding ticket. You say, oh, I'm just not going to pay it. And they're like, okay, we'll just pull your license. You're like, well, okay, I have a right to drive without a license. I'm just going to drive without a license. Which you do. Okay, so you drive without a license. And then they stop you. And they say, oh, you're going to jail. And you say, no, you don't have a right to take me to jail. I'm going to defend myself. And so they shoot you and they put you in a wooden box on the ground. So the lowly traffic ticket is a death sentence. Right. If you do not comply. Everything in our justice system is a gun to our head. And as a side note, for the people that want to get on these things, the traffic ticket's also unconstitutional under the 7th Amendment. But the point is, we can make these arguments. You can make these oral arguments in a courtroom, and very rarely, occasionally, sometimes the arguments have an effect. But for the most part, the court just does whatever it wants. And until we fix that, until we fix the root of the cause, until we restore law in this country, we're not going to have liberty.
So how do we do that? Because what you're talking about is real. I'm looking for something, and you may not have the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but what can we do? We're so far gone, and we're so transfixed on, this silly election that's going on. It's just a puppet show. It's just, they want to further divide us. What can we do other than show up with 1 million people and surround a courthouse and demand change? And even that, they're going to bring in, SWAT teams. I mean, so what do we do?
Well, you raised a couple problems. First of all, I would say that really the only thing, we're so far gone. I mean, the Constitution's gone, the country's gone, the law is gone in this country. We're a country, our government exists in a state of anarchy at this point, and an absence of law, if you prefer. But the bottom line is, I would say that there's no way at this point to restore law without divine intervention. Now, some people will soundly disagree with me on that. So let's go to the standing up part. Well, you say we put 1 million people. You get 1 million people standing up. Now you have some real action. But let's look no further than Burns and all the patriot groups all over America who said, we're going to be there, man. How many were there? I don't know. Maybe a few dozen, maybe 100. I don't know how many exactly were there, but it wasn't very many. And the people, the tough-talking, gun-toting patriot militias, they didn't show up, and they didn't take action. And I'm not saying, obviously we don't want violent action. The point is, you don't even need 1 million. If you had 1,000 militiamen show up in Burns to peacefully stand, you probably wouldn't have needed blood. Because, when you got one guy standing up for himself, they just kill him. When you got 3 guys, they second-guess themselves. Look, the government is the greatest bully in the universe, next to Satan himself. So what they do is they don't want to actually take on people. Why do you think they illegally blocked the road, illegally stopped Lavoie Finicum, and assassinated him on a lonely road with no cell service when they had 10 times the resources and 10 times the people that needed? So you put 1,000 peaceful armed people that say no more, you've got a real stand right there.
Well, listen, I think
because we don't want that.
I think we can go no further than the Bundy Ranch just a couple of years ago to see that worked.
Right. A few of us actually showed up, and there was people there, and it made a lot of difference. And again, I would say, well, they were about to come in and kill us then too. And at the last minute, that was called off. And so there's no guarantee that we avoid violence, but the Patriots principle to me, the principled liberty lover to me, personally, I put God first, then my family, my neighbor, and the principles of liberty. And if we stand up, my goal is always to be a peacemaker. Sometimes to be a peacemaker, you have to defend against terrorism from individuals, against criminal actions from individuals. But if you have an armed people, armed and ready and standing and bold and principled, that's how you avoid bloodshed. See, there's always this spin. We have to take back the language and the narrative of what's going on, and the way the media likes to spin this. They say, oh, well, when you show up with guns, you're not peaceful. Wrong. When you show up with guns, it's because you don't want to use them.
You know, I heard so many people say, oh, well, they should never have showed up with guns and I think they're wrong. Now, I kind of want to get an idea from you. What did you think of the whole idea that Ammon had to begin with? Because a lot of people, especially people that are supposedly liberty-minded and patriot-minded, and they kind of broke away from that and said, we don't feel too good about this. And then you heard a ton of infighting with this one's a government shill and this one's an FBI informant. What was your take on the strategy and the tactics right from the get-go?
You know, I think sometimes you got to do bold, daring things that nobody thinks will work. And let's face it, the occupation in Oregon, legally restoring that land to the people's use. I hesitate to say occupation because an occupation is what you have now. The federal government is now illegally occupying that land once again, and the county sheriff will not step up and enforce the law and throw them out. But I think a lot of us said, well, you know, we think this tactic's kind of over the top. But at the end of the day, the guy that's doing something kind of makes that decision. As long as you're principled, as long as you're not abusing the rights of others, what Ammon did, he had every legal right to do. And it started an instant worldwide conversation that is still going right now. And so the world changed with the Oregon Front. We saw them spill the blood of patriots. We saw them and see them attacking our own, arresting them. We've exposed, in a short period of time, you've exposed some of the most egregious violations of human rights that happen within government, all to the eyes of the world. And I don't know that that's what Ammon was looking for. I mean, I don't know what all was in his mind, but the reality is Ammon upheld the rule of law, and so did those patriots down there. And so while all the political groups, in order to excuse themselves from the situation, they start putting out press releases saying, well, we disagree with this. That's bull. If you uphold the rule of law, you defend the rule of law. You stand with liberty. And if you have somebody who's doing that, you don't have to agree with how everybody does something. The question is, are they defending liberty? Are they upholding the rule of law? Is this right?
I said early on when hearing about the Hammonds, and let's not forget, that's kind of where this all started, right, was the Hammond case. And I think with all the different groups out there and all the different individuals arguing with each other over was Lavoie reaching for a gun? Is what the Ammon brothers and their group did, was that right? Was it not right? Was it the right tactic? I think we're missing the bigger point here. And the reason why they were there was an overreaching, illegal, unconstitutional government. And you're right. And I said this early on. I said, guys, you can disagree with what they did, how they did it, but the fact of the matter is that they're there now, and they're bringing national attention to this real issue. And I think the only thing they did wrong was they overestimated the American people's readiness to stand up with them. Because I think if more of us, and this is myself included, now I'm on the East Coast, and of course, Gavin, I had an excuse why I didn't and couldn't travel all the way out there. And I feel guilty on some level about not getting out there and standing with these guys. But if 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 20,000 of us went out there and stood with these guys, Lavoie would most likely still be alive. And there might be a real change going on in this country. Instead, we stood down, we argued amongst each other, we talked about who's the shill, we talked about
who's the informant.
Right. Who's the terrorist and who's the informant, and you had people fighting with each other. But I think the seed has been planted. I think the brush fires have been lit, and we, you, me, the rest of us out here need to continue to fan the flames, and we need to put to rest all the petty differences, because we can fight about those later. We need to focus our attention, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. We need to focus our attention on what really matters, and that's the enemy. And in my estimation, the enemy is the lawless government.
Justice matters. And and that's the thing. All the way back to the Hammond case, all the way back to them charging the Hammonds with terrorism because they burned weeds while they were torching the county, burning people's property, burning houses. This is while the BLM was doing this, I mean, not the Hammonds. While they were, doing these so-called maintenance fires that were killing their cows and burning them alive. I mean, there's no question who the terrorists are. And so I don't allow people to take the language like this. They start calling these guys terrorists, and I make it very clear, no, you're supporting terrorists when you support this government. You're supporting terrorists when you support these people that murdered Lavoy Finicum. You're supporting terrorists when you support the judges that have these people in jail. It's time to start being very clear about who the terrorists are and who the loyalists are. And I don't care if it's your own family. We don't hate anyone. We defend everyone's liberty, but it's time to start telling people like it is and to quit playing these political pandering politics. And I see this all the time, even in situations like this, from most of the politicians and stuff. The political groups and politicians, they're so concerned about what people will think of them and what'll get them elected next time. Even the liberty-minded ones, that they really are a day late and a dollar short for everything. And this is what we saw in Oregon. And so I don't know how many people Ammon expected to show up, but I know for the most part, America didn't. And here's the thing. Everybody, for example, when it was going down, just you or just me showing up down there wouldn't have made a difference. We would have just got arrested. The point is, while it was going on, or worse, while it was going on, people could have showed up. But more importantly, we each have different roles. And everybody in some way needed to be actively supporting this. Everybody that was a patriot. It didn't mean that if they lived in New York, necessarily they were going to drive across the country and leave their family and their job, but they could have sent money, they could have sent supplies, they could have been volunteering behind the scenes. In some way, instead of scrapping, they should have been supporting. And really, who needed to show up on the ground was the groups that have been telling us for years, donate, give us money, support us. We're the guys. Because, people will say, well, what are you doing, Gavin? Well, I'm doing my job. My job is getting the message out, and I'm still doing it to this day, even though it puts me on the line. And the political groups that we've been supporting for years said, well, this is our job. When the day comes, we're going to be there on the ground. We're going to have the logistics, the supplies, and the organization. We're going to do the things that you can't call for over a public radio. We're going to be there standing boldly and principled for peace. And the problem is, when everybody has an excuse, there's no liberty. You can't fix liberty that way. So people have to stand up. They have to be bold. They have to be willing to put it on the line. They have to be principled. We have to be willing to repent and throw off our foolishness, our apathy, our laziness. Liberty has to come before football, guys. That's all there is to it. And I mean, especially to the men. The women are more tenacious in this country than the men. The men have become such a bunch of apathetic, lazy cowards that it blows my mind. It's like, you guys got to be kidding me. Most of the people I know, it's weird, and I'm sure you know this, Tommy. To live in this world where you know what's going on and it's heavy on your heart. It's like you're carrying a burden all the time, and you're kind of like, people are dying, people are going to jail, and then you talk to friends, and they're just, oh yeah, I heard something about that on the news. That was kind of wild. What happened there? I mean, they're just totally not awake. And you know who's the chief of being asleep in this country is the professing Christian church. I mean, the pastors and the pulpits, they're the most silent and apathetic. There's always an excuse. Just obey the government, do what you're told.
I've heard people make the argument, and I think it's an easy argument to make. They're actually, working for the government in a lot of cases, right? Haven't we heard that there's a lot of pastors and in groups out there that are actually working with the government to keep the government?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. I mean, when you got these pastors, we've seen these videos in churches where they practically got the congregation standing up and swearing an oath to the police, and it's just, it's sickening. But this is what happens when you put the words of men before principle, before God, before liberty. I mean, if you say, oh, I'm just going to follow that guy, don't follow Tommy, don't follow me, stand up for something. And people say, well, they're the authority, whether they're talking in a biblical sense or in a secular sense. Authority is it must be just. Otherwise, it's false authority. You don't follow false authority. And so it's easy to tell. Authority, real authority. I realize that our government can come and hold a gun to our head and get away with it. Real authority comes by earning respect. That's really what real authority comes by. And our government doesn't have it. Our pastors don't have it. Our schools certainly don't have it. And people got to start standing up for what's right. They got to start being willing to be the leaders and say, to their family, to their friends, what is wrong with you? You supporting terrorists? I don't support terrorists.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a whole nation that's been indoctrinated, and I'm amazed when I talk to people about this, and they have no clue that it even happened. Like, they don't even know Lavoy Finicum. They don't know who Ammon Bundy is. They don't know what happened 2 years ago out at the ranch. But what do you do now? Because there's a real fear out there. I mean, I don't want to end up in prison, because you're right. The chances are they're going to lock me up and throw away the key, even if I did nothing wrong. Right. I don't want to end up dead, buried in the ground, especially if I'm not doing anything wrong or just standing up for my rights. What do you do when people we're just afraid? And frankly, I think a lot of us are looking for a leader that we can rally around, because, and I'll speak for myself, I don't want to be running out front and look back and notice I'm the only guy out there.
Hey! Yeah. Well, but oftentimes that's how it is. It seems like. And, for me, I mean, look, yeah, we're afraid. I mean, they could come to the door any moment. And in my case, I half expect it. But you know what? And that's, for me, I put my faith in God. I put my faith in Christ, and I pray a lot. And people say, well, Gavin, how do you do this stuff? That's how. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. So you know what? I'm not going to force it on people. You don't have to go to my Bible study or believe my way. But that's just the cold, hard facts. The reason I'm willing to stand, the reason I have the ability to do what I do, is because I have God. And I know that if I'm supposed to be in prison, or if I'm supposed to be dead, or if I'm supposed to not be, and I'm going to keep speaking out, it's not in my hands. And so I'm just going to do what's right, period, come what may.
All right. So I know you got to be getting out of here in a few minutes. I want to kind of touch on Lavoy Finicum for a second. And I've heard people say all kinds of horrible things about this man. And I didn't know who he was a month ago, or maybe 6 weeks ago. I just started to see his face, started to learn more about him. And after he was gunned down, I went back and found his YouTube channel and started watching his videos and listening to his words. And I can't get over, if anyone actually took the time to watch his videos and listen to what he was saying, I can't get over how people can call him a terrorist and some horrible, horrible names. He stood for something that I thought was great. And I think America needs to take the time to go and listen to his message. And he laid it all out in the line, and he paid the ultimate price. And I think we owe it to him to preserve his memory and continue to fight for what he was fighting for. We need to pick up the flag. What do we do? How do we do it? How can we help? Because there's a whole bunch of people out there, and I know that, you're just asking for money again. He's an e-beggar. What can we do if we can't show up out there? How do we send support to the people, our brothers and sisters that are now in the court system, now in solitary confinement, now in federal prison, to help support them and hopefully beat these charges?
Well, you can go into your courtrooms, you can watch, you can find the people, you can actually start paying attention and see the people that are getting railroaded and start contacting them in jails and in prisons and seeing how you can help. If you can get a message out for them, if you can make sure they got their commissary card full so they can make phone calls, you can show up at events. Yes, you can go to protests and stuff, but we're getting to the point where we're really beyond protests. We need civil principled defiance of these tyrants, but get involved in some way. But here's the thing. If you can't show up, then you start supporting financially, and I don't mean you're going to pay everybody's way. I don't mean you can support everything, but don't be telling me you're a patriot when you're not even willing to break your wallet out and bring $20 out, to help people. Don't even try it with me. If your ease and your comfort and your apathy is more precious to you than the song of liberty, then strap on your chains and walk away, because I don't want any part of it.
So I think you're right on the money, and I'm tighter than two coats of paint when it comes to money, but I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and where my heart is. Do you have any information on how we can support them directly out there? Is there a fund? Is there a GoFundMe, whatever way to fund these people out there to get them some commissary or put it?
For commissary, that's usually through the jail scam system, so they can take a fee of it. And so I'm actually working on a page with a list of those. But Ammon Bundy has a fundraiser, but there's a lot of the other guys that have been arrested, and they're setting up these funded justice pages, and they are not getting much attention. I just posted one on my page, Gavin's Time for Liberty, earlier for John Ritzheimer. There's one for, who was the other one on there, Nathan?
John Ritzheimer and
Ryan Payne. There was one for him.
Yes.
And so what I'm doing on my end is we're trying to make a cohesive list. But if you start searching and watching pages like mine, like Bundy Ranch, like things like that, you can see these. And so in particular, I know we have Ammon Bundy's, we have John Ritzheimer's, and I believe there's a couple more, and I'm going to try and get a cohesive list on my website. And look, I mean, it may not even, maybe it's a patriot in your community that's getting railroaded for something. I know there's one for James Fair up in Okanagan County. And so find somebody, as many as you can, to help in whatever way you can, be it showing up, being contributing. To me, like the sharing on social media, the getting the word out, that's kind of a given. Like you need to be doing more than that.
All right, so
it might just be your neighbor. It might just be your neighbor getting abused by government you're showing up for. It might not even be a patriot. It might be somebody that you're showing what it means to love your neighbor. And if you go back, I mean, I like what you just said about Lavoie, because Lavoie was a peacemaker. Lavoie was not there preaching hate or violence or crimes or anything. In fact, you got to wonder, and this is the key thing, start uniting. I don't mean compromise your values with somebody just so you can be their buddy. I mean unite on the principles of liberty and defend them for everyone. I don't care who they are. And look what Lavoie was doing just before they killed him. They were exposing the BLM. They were exposing the corruption of the federal government. He was trying to unite with the Native Americans. He was trying to get them involved in it. And really, that's never been done. The government wants the division. They want the hate. That has to be put aside. And so when people like Lavoie step up and start opposing that, they killed him. That's what they do.
Yeah, it's sickening. All right, so what is your website again, so people can go to it to find out this list that you're putting together? That's important.
My website is callmegavin.com, and we don't have that list up yet, but we are working on compiling all the names and getting all the information we can, and then we can consistently update it as new people add donation pages and stuff like that. You can follow guys like Pete Santilli, Talk News Network, the Bundy Ranch, my page, Gavin Simon for Liberty, Victoria Sharp's page. I mean, just start watching for the people that are engaged in this stuff. Subscribe to their newsletters. Don't rely on Facebook. I mean, they're banning people left and right. So
bundyranch.blogspot.com.
Yeah, that's their blog. And I believe you can sign up for their email newsletter. And then you can also follow the page on Facebook. So just get yourself engaged. And, look, everybody's got to follow their own conscience. And that's why I didn't point the finger at anybody. As this was all going down and I was putting out videos, I said, look, I'm not pointing the finger at you for not being there. If you feel like you're not called to be there right now, so be it. But make sure you're doing something. Make sure you're really helping in some way.
Well, first off, I want to say this because I hear Nathan in the background, and I know he's not on camera, but I also know that he was instrumental in helping out last Thursday and then again Friday morning. So I want to say thanks, Nathan Stein, for doing all that you're doing out there, even though you don't
Nathan's right here. And if you got anything,
there he is. What's up, man?
Do you have anything you want to add to this? Get down there so your camera face isn't.
I think I've already added everything through Gavin I had to say. I think he's touching all the points. I've been texting him and whispering to him the whole time. So
I hear you. That's why I want to say, hey, man, thank you for what you're doing too.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Gavin, I'm going to go even a little further, and I don't know if anyone else out there wants to join me, but me personally, how can we support you and what you're doing?
Well, there's a donation page on my site, and we certainly appreciate that because there's a lot of time, and I'm sure you deal with the same thing. I mean, people should be supporting your efforts as well. And so people that are getting the word out, try to support them. But I've been telling people, look, we can really use funds to pay for the expensive, but, I would, if you're going to do that, also give half of what you would give to me to one of these patriots out there. Make sure let's help our guys in jail first and foremost. And, because we need to really show that we can get behind our people. Look, the enemy is supporting their own way more than we're supporting our own. We're not getting these guys the funds. And this is the thing. I mean, I get all these people and they're saying, yo, Gavin, what you did is great. We're going to be there for you. And I know from experience from before that when I actually go to jail, most of them are going to do nothing. They're not going to show up. They're not going to donate. And I'm going to be mostly on my own with me and my family. And so I know where these guys are sitting, and I could be there next week. You could be there next week. We need to start supporting our own as much as possible. But there is a donate page on my site as well.
You're absolutely right. And like I said, I'm tighter than two coats of paint, but I'm gonna step up to the plate and I'm gonna support you, as well as I'm gonna wait until I see the information on your website and then support the patriots out there. I hope you folks watching will be able to find a little extra change and do the same thing. Remember, guys, this is a war. We are in a war for our country. We're in a war for our children's future. We're not going to just win it by sitting here on a YouTube. This is part of it. This is the first part of it. We want to educate more people. But there's more steps that we need to take because remember, I said it before, this is a ground up effort. It's not going to be one from the top down. We need to stop sending money to these presidential political candidates.
No kidding.
Start doing something else.
Don't send it to the Republican Party or the Democrat Party or the Libertarian Party. Skip it. None of the candidates there. And let me qualify this with you absolutely should get involved on a local level. If your county could get a decent sheriff, and I don't mean a guy that says Constitution every 2 minutes to make you feel good. I mean a guy that will actually stick his neck out and has a track record of doing so. So try and take back your counties and your more local communities. Forget about fixing this on the presidential level. It's not going to happen. And do whatever you can to get involved in whatever way you can. Because as Tommy just said, I just want to reiterate that this is a war. It's a war where we're trying to avoid violence. But let's make no mistake, the government, the U.S. government, with complicit states, counties, and communities in government, they have declared war on America. And it is treason because they've actually declared war on the law, the principles, and the people of America, even though they're our own government.
I mean, hey, they've pretty much come out and said everybody in the country is a terrorist.
Yeah, except them. And so, and just like, you know what government did to somebody by what they're charging them with. I mean, that's really where we're at right now. For the most part, if a police report says, oh, he did this to me, and so we're charging him with this, what really happened is the police officer did that to him, and so they charge him with it, just like they did with Jeff Winehouse, just like they're doing with the Patriots. If you defend the rule of law, you're a terrorist. The terrorists we're dealing with, the greatest terrorist organization, and look, I'm not going to allow Sharia law on my block, but at the same time, the problem isn't Muslims. The problem isn't the border. I'm going to defend everybody's liberty equally. Yeah, we should have a safe, secure border. We should have a reasonable immigration process. No, there's no Sharia law going to be allowed because it's not law. At the same time, if I have a Muslim guy living next door, I'm not going to be idle while he's abused either. The reality is the terrorists in this country, the greatest terrorist threat is our own government, and they are terrorizing us right now. American police killed 1,500 people last year, guys. 1,500 people. And other countries, third world countries, are looking at us aghast. They're like, wow, I can't believe this is happening in their country. I can't believe they tolerate that. And so really we're becoming the third world country. And you can shake your head and say, no, we're still the greatest country in the world. Bull. We are becoming the third world country. We are a country of tyranny and lies and despotism and terrorism right here at home. That's what we got to fix it, starting right in your community.
Well, and listen, man, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for taking the time. We didn't even get into all the 1871, old Constitution, new Constitution, government. We didn't get into any of that stuff. But I think what's important, I think the message is here that we need to get involved in. Right. We're all going to have different skill sets. We're all going to have different things that we're good at, but we need to figure out what that is and get involved to the level that you can, the level that you're comfortable. But damn it, get involved. Gavin, thanks so much for joining us. And go to Gavin's page, support him. Go to Gavin's page and check out how you can support the other patriots out there that are literally sitting in a cell right now.
Hey, appreciate it, Tommy. Yeah, everybody just keep standing up and and just be careful. I mean, remember, we're kind of behind the Iron Curtain almost in here. It wouldn't surprise me pretty soon if they start stopping people from leaving this country. So be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, as they say.
All right, man. Have a good night. Good luck on your other chat. We'll see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.